Well, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, I have another fantastic guest with us today. I'm so honored. My new fast friend here, Willis from Homefront Sitrep, a very popular, in fact, in some categories, number one veteran podcast out there. And we're going to learn his story of service. So thanks for joining us, Willis. And if I could, I always have fun with this since we're on the radio. Let's do a little radio check. How do you read me over?
I'm reading you loud and clear. Lehman Charlie.
Fantastic. Yeah. So let's start with your origin story. Let's talk about, what were the circumstances? What was the decision that led up to you joining the service to begin with? And specifically, I'm interested in why you chose the branch of service and the job that you wound up with.
I'm from Kentucky originally. I grew up in Bardstown, Kentucky, which is bourbon capital of the world. And first off, I'm gonna say thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, of course.
It's my honor to be on your show. I grew up in Bardstown, Kentucky, and I grew up with a single mom, four kids. And my granddad, when I was younger, I was probably maybe 5 or 6, and my granddad told everybody he's going in the military. And for some reason, it just stuck with me in my brain that, I was going to go in the military. And as I got older, um, in Kentucky where I was at, there was not a whole lot to do. You could go work in a factory, you could go work in the distillery making bourbon wherever. So there wasn't a whole lot to do in my small town. And as I got older, I started looking into the branches, the different branches out there, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and I always heard that the Marine Corps was the best of the best. So me being the type of person that has to challenge myself, I said, "Hey, I'm going to go in the Marine Corps because that's the best of the best." And so I went and talked to Gunny Groach was my recruiter. I went and talked to Gunny Groach and I said, "Hey, I want to go to the Marine Corps." And he said, "All right, let's go take the ASFAB." So I went and took the ASFAB, scored a 98 on the ASFAB. And he goes, "You can have any job in the Marine Corps you want. What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to be infantry, 0311. That's what I want to do." Because to me, that was the backbone of the Marine Corps.
Right?
And Gunny goes, "Are you sure that's what you want to do?" And I was like, "Yes, Gunny, that's what I want to do." And so he goes, "All right." So that was my probably right at the end of my sophomore year, going into my junior year. So I was on the delayed entry program. And now I played football all the way up to high school until I graduated high school. And so I was a half credit short of graduating high school, and it was an elective. So I was going through summer school to get that half credit that I needed. And Gunny calls me up, and I'm only in summer school for maybe 3 weeks total at this time. I still hadn't got that final credit to get my diploma. And he goes, "Hey, we got an earlier spot for you to go to boot camp. When you get done with boot camp and you get to your main unit, you tell them that you're on the high school sit program, and they'll let you go get your diploma." I was like, "All right, cool, send me. Let's go, let's rock." I was ready. I had to get out of Barstown because the route that I was going with the friends that was hanging out with was not the right path for me because some of them wound up in jail afterwards, after like 6 months after I left. So I was like, "All right, I got to get out of Barstown before something crazy happens."
Right.
And sure enough, I went to boot camp. I went to Paris Island, and I was with First Battalion. Went down there, did my boot camp. Got done with boot camp, came home on boot leave. I was home for maybe 10 days or so, whatever boot leave was. Then went back to Camp Geiger, North Carolina for School of Infantry. Did my School of Infantry and then got put in with 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines Golf Company. So that's my military. And then, I traveled, quite frequently with the Marine Corps. Like we went to Port-au-Prince, Haiti, Thessaloniki, Greece, Okinawa, South Korea. Um, did a med float with Marine Corps as well, and so I had a blast. Let's just put it that way.
That's awesome. Frequent flyer miles and all. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I went around the world twice before I was 22. So
Yeah.
uh, I've
Yeah.
been on every continent except for no, I've been on every continent except for the North and South Pole. So,
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize you can travel a lot, even in
oh
peacetime.
yeah.
You can do a lot of traveling. So that's fantastic. Now, with your job specifically in the infantry, that's a tough gig, right? But it's like you said, the backbone of what the point is. So a lot of training, a lot of leadership, a lot of teamwork, a lot of troublemakers in my experience, but it's fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Was there a particular, maybe a leader or a lesson that came out of that is still kind of relevant today that kind of, gave you something to rely on as you move forward?
Yeah, so I had a staff sergeant who was a sniper. Staff Sergeant Westall, Brandon Westall was his name, and so when I transferred from Second Battalion, Eighth Marines to First Battalion, Eighth Marines Bravo Company, he was my platoon sergeant. So I was in Third Platoon, and he had just recently transitioned from Scout Sniper to infantry platoon, but he was going back to a Scout Sniper platoon just to they were just doing a shakeup somehow. I forget how it was, and he pulled me off to the side. I had just picked up corporal, and he goes, Corporal Willis, come talk with me. I was like, all right. So I went and sat down with him. He goes, here's what I'm going to tell you about being an NCO. I was like, all right, shoot. He goes, sit back and listen to your junior Marines. Don't talk, don't speak. Just sit back and listen. He said, you'll learn everything that you need to know about your Marines just by listening. And even still today, that's something that I carry with me now. I sit back and listen before I even talk because that's how you figure out people and their motives and their personalities. You just sit back and listen to them, and that's a life lesson that I'll take with me to the grave, probably.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible advice. Yeah. I had an NCO once in years past say, you have two ears and one mouth for a reason,
Yep. Yep.
Listen more than you speak. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, so that's good that you had a good leadership role, especially as a corporal. He was setting you on the right path.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it definitely set me on the right path. And, when I got out, I rated E5. So I got out right before 9/11 happened. I got out in August. I was in terminal leave. And I rated E5, but I wasn't re-enlisted. So in the Marine Corps, if you don't re-enlist, they give that billet to somebody else.
sure.
So I got out August 1st. I was on terminal leave all the way up to September. And then 9/11 happened.
Hmm.
I got involuntary recalled. Well, I wasn't the only one, but it was the first time the
Yeah,
Marine Corps ever activated the individual ready reserves. And when I went back to Camp Lejeune with the mobilization support battalion, they're like, "Well, you're an E5." I was like, "No, when I got out, I was an E4. I was never promoted." And they're like, "Well, we're going to temporarily promote you to E5."
hmm.
So on paper, I was still an E4, but I was getting paid as an E5, and I wore the rank of E5 because they needed senior leadership. I was like, all right, if that's what you want to do, and if you look at all my paperwork, my DD-214s, I got two of them, and both of them say E4, and I'm like, that don't make no sense. But I never officially got pinned, so it's the military; they do whatever they want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was a fantastic gentleman on our show recently that was talking about the Marine Corps, loves the Marine Corps. But he said the Marines are fantastic at fighting and battle
Mhm.
plans, but we're really bad with administrative paperwork.
Yes, very bad. And I'm still trying to get my DD-214 amended because some of my medals and my ribbons and stuff like that was awarded to the whole unit wasn't on my DD-214 when I got out. So prime example, we were on a naval ship going from North Carolina to Port-au-Prince, or not Port-au-Prince, but Puerto Rico, Rosie Roads. And there were some refugees that had capsized in the middle of the ocean. Well, we rescued those guys. And when we got done rescuing them, they're like, "Oh, well, you guys are going to be awarded a Coast Guard service, like some kind of Coast Guard service medal."
Sure.
And that never got put on my record, my SRB and stuff. And there's some other things that didn't get put in there. So I'm in the process of getting that amended.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Eventually, hopefully they'll get that squared away for you.
definitely.
Yeah, so you had lots of travels, lots of leaders. And then of course you got recalled. So that was an experience by itself. How did that last part go? Obviously, that's a surprise, right? No one likes to get
Hmm.
called, but of course, the world changed overnight. So a lot of us, you know, suck it up and drive on, I guess was the mantra back then for a lot of us. But
Yeah, definitely.
once that second part, how did that work? Were you extended for like another year? How long did that go? And when did you
So
know you
I
could
got
finally start getting out?
well, I got out in 2004, so
Okay.
it went on for, but I actually wound up re-enlisting because I didn't want to be like a working party basically,
Yeah.
because that's what we were technically going to be with the mobilization support battalion. So I wound up re-enlisting, and I was in until 2004, um, and it was way different when that time. Like the first time was mainly peacetime. And we did a lot of training and stuff like that during that, going to Bridgeport, California and doing cold weather training and stuff. But that second time, it was a whole different mindset within the military. It was like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And um, it was way different.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but with you being in the military, you kind of know what I'm talking about. How like you said, the world changed overnight. I mean, it was a whole different mindset with everybody within the military at that time.
Yeah. It was wild time. So I got out in oh well, technically '06 was like January of '06. It's barely into that year. And now you look at everything that's happened since, and it's like, my gosh, I mean, I can't imagine. I don't know if I would have had the mental ability to stay in because a lot of these service members, it wasn't enough to just do one tour. A
Yeah,
lot of the units kept getting redeployed.
yeah,
They're home for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and they're gone for 6 months, 9 months, a year. You try to do that while doing anything else in your life, whether it's trying to finish a degree, trying to raise a family, start a job, career, whatever. All those gaps, all those in betweens, high tempo when you're over there,
yeah.
and then you're supposed to assimilate to civilian life and try to be like the steady Eddie, if you will.
Right.
And maybe you get close, but then you get deployed again.
Yeah, that's one thing that I didn't really have to worry about. So during my first enlistment, I got married like a dummy. I was a young dumb Marine, let's just put it that way. And uh, me and her, we dated for about a year and a half, and then I went to California December of '99. So we got married October of '99. December, I went to California for my second time at Bridgeport for cold weather training, and I came back home a day early. I was supposed to be gone for the whole month and come back January 1st. Well, I came back a day early on the advance party and drove home and pulled on the street and uh, got that gut feeling, oh, something's wrong, that something's not right. Sure enough, I pulled in the driveway, opened up the door, there was music playing, and I caught her in bed with a squid. And
Ouch.
so, needless to say, me and her separated, um, and when I went back in, we were still separated. We wasn't married, separated. So I hadn't seen her since I moved back on base after I caught her cheating on me. And so I didn't really worry about, family other than my mom and my sisters and, aunts and uncles and stuff that were back home. But I didn't even tell them what I was doing. All they knew that I was back at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, just in case. I never told mom where I was going because I was the only son. My brother died in '94. He was younger than I was. He was 10 when he passed. I was 15. So I knew if I had told mom, "Hey, I'm getting deployed," she would have freaked out and probably had a heart attack. So I didn't tell anybody in my family what I was doing just because I didn't need them to worry about what I was doing. I still called them every day that I could, which I'm even to this day, I'm still piss poor at calling people. It's just I call people, once every month and a half, 2 months, but just reaching out to them daily is just something that I've never done.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Tough, strange time. So now walk me through, I guess, the part where now you're getting out, at least, unless something else happened, right?
right.
So what was that time frame like? Did you have um a couple months to prepare, or did you just kind of ETS out and then just figure it out from there? How did that initial transition home go for you?
So when I was done, I had terminal leave. But before we went on terminal leave, the unit I was with, um, they're pretty much just like, all right, you're what we call short timers. So we wasn't going to deploy with a Bridgeport or anything, CAX or anything like that. So we were basically stuck in a barracks by ourselves, and we had to report for morning formation. But they're like, you do whatever you need to do to to get all your paperwork in order for you to get out. So they put us all together, and there was probably 10 or 12 of us that was getting out at the same time, same date. And so we just basically, went to, supply and turned all the gear in, went to the armory, turned all of our weapons in and all of that. And I didn't really focus on what I was going to do when I got out. I was just focused on what I was doing at that time. Now, nowadays, the military, when you get out, you're already going through the whole process of finding a job back home. You're already talking to the VA and getting your VA paperwork set up, which in 2004 they wasn't doing that, but now they are.
Yeah.
So the transition for me, I was lucky enough to find a job pretty much when I landed. When I got back home, I was lucky enough to find a job. It was working in the pest control industry, which I didn't really know anything about, but luckily the company I worked for, they trained you on the job. And I was making okay money, starting out, and I wasn't married at the time, and I met the my current wife. Um, my plan I had a military plan. I was going to go get out of the Marine Corps, go into the Army, and finish my 14 years. That was my plan.
Okay.
So I went and talked to an Army recruiter and had all the paperwork set up. I was going to go Germany for five years right off the get go. I was going to get a $50,000 enlistment bonus. I was going to go from E5 to E6. And I was pretty much after I got done with my tour in Germany, I was going to be pretty much stateside after that. Um, the doctor who let me join the Marine Corps that signed all my paperwork when I joined the Marine Corps the first time denied me from joining the Army because they said I had asthmatic symptoms. Never was diagnosed with asthma,
Hmm.
just asthmatic symptoms. I was like, Doc, you're the one that let me go into the Marine Corps. I've got 6 years in the Marine Corps, and you're going to tell me I can't go in the Army. And he goes, Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. And I'm like, so, but this is also the time where they changed the tattoo policy where you couldn't have tattoos below your elbows,
Mhm.
and they were or wasn't letting a lot of guys re-enlist because of the tattoos below their elbows. So I'm thinking that the reason they wouldn't let me go in the military was because of the tattoo, but they didn't want to come out and say that. So they came up with asthmatic symptoms.
Hmm.
And I'm like, bro, come on. But hindsight's 2020. My current wife right now, she could not be a military spouse. She can be a veteran spouse, but not an active duty spouse. And she had told me, she goes, if you go back in the military, we're done. So 20 years later, we're still together. We got a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. So
There
me,
you go.
myself, and I think the
Yeah,
man
that's
upstairs,
right. God's
he
plan. Yeah,
he had a plan, and I've been sticking with it ever since.
yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a good good ending to what was initially a disappointment. That's great.
Yes, sir, for sure.
So then how did this recent thing, I don't want to say too recent, but how did this come about? I mean, this whole you're doing a fantastic job with I'm familiar with Homefront Sitrep. I know you're part of a lot of other shows as well. But how did that come about? And don't be bashful. Tell our listeners how they can follow and support you because as you know, all of our listeners are big fans of the military and veteran community. So tell us how that came about and what we can do to kind of track and support you.
Awesome. So yeah, I got involved with a lot of veteran charities, veteran service organizations in my local area here in Kentucky, and um, volunteered with them for quite a little bit of time, probably up until 2020, I guess it was. So I was doing, volunteering. My passion is my primary passion is veteran homelessness. That's my primary passion. I've tried to start a tiny home community in my area. And needless to say, when I resigned from the board 2 months later, the project got canceled without, without my control. It was just things just happened. So it left a bad taste. Well, when I resigned, I was like, all right, I'm going to start a podcast. And I started looking into all the different other podcasts out there and seeing what they were talking about. And what I noticed was most of the veteran podcasts would bring in veterans to tell their stories, and I'm talking about high profile stories, not just your average Joe military story, but your high profile stories.
Sure.
And so I was like, all right, what am I going to do? What do I know? And at that time, nobody was really talking about veteran service organizations. Sure, every now and then you would have a veteran that was representing an organization come on a podcast and talk about it, but nobody was focusing on the grassroots, the mom and pops, the veteran service organizations. And I was like, all right, that's what I want to do. I want to talk about that. And the lady who started the podcast with me was a homeless veteran at one time, and we got her a house and we helped her get a house and stuff like that and get her back on her feet. And um, so that's what we focused on. We focused on veteran service organizations. So our first podcast was released on February 28th of 2023. And it's called Homefront Sitrep. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're pretty much everywhere. Military United podcast streams, Heroes Media Group. And then, we're got all kinds of things all kinds of irons in the fire. And, we're, like you said at the beginning of the show, we're rated number 1. If you go to Google and type in 100 best veteran podcast, the very top one will pop up and it'll be FeedSpot. And we're listed number 1 on FeedSpot, which is something that I never intentionally set out to do. My intention was to one, highlight veteran service organizations from around the country, and then link somebody who's in California with the Hope Project down in Florida, which is a retired chaplain, David Trodston, who uh, rescues horses, and then he brings in veterans and does equine therapy with the veterans.
Hmm.
Or you got Nicholas Ron with Warriors Next Adventures, who takes veterans on hikes. And so my whole thing is to connect veterans with other veterans. And then if we have veterans that come on our show that, like last night, or I did a meet and greet on Wednesday night with Garrett Biss, who is a veteran empowerment coach, and he's doing all kinds of other wonderful work. Well, there's another Marine Corps veteran, Dr. Teresa Larson, who started Movement RX. Well, that's basically what she does.
Hmm.
So I got them linked together, and then that's the whole purpose, is to be that
Yeah.
Rolodex of veteran service organizations. So if I have a veteran that calls me and say, "Hey, I need some help doing this," I'm like, "All right, let me get you connected with Cletus Evans with the Marine Corps League." So that's the whole purpose of what we're doing on the podcast.
Like good old fashioned force multiplication, right?
Yes, pretty much. Because if you look out there, there's not a one-stop shop for all these different connections. And doing a podcast for over a year, it's a year, almost a year and a half now. I've made a lot of connections, and we do four shows a week. We do
Wow.
Sunday and Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays we're starting at 8 o'clock Eastern. And I have it's myself, and then Candace, who is not a veteran. Her daddy's an Army veteran, but she's been in the veteran charity world with her Mission Six nonprofit. And then I brought in 2 other veterans. I brought in Donald Dunn and Brandon Cooper, and they are amazing. They had their own podcast, and they've stopped their podcast, and they came on board with Homefront. And um, just a lot of things going on with we got Veterans Voice Radio, we got Military United podcast streams, which is where we're basically on Facebook, and we're broadcasting to over 12,000 people when we go live.
Wow.
And then Heroes Media Group with Adam Bird. Adam Bird is one of the OG veteran podcasters out there. He's been doing it for over a decade, and he's put a network together called Heroes Media Group, and his what he does for veterans is amazing. If you wrote a book and you want to help get it published, they help you do that. If you want to start a podcast, we help you do that. And there's just, oh man, I'm telling you, there's so many doors that have opened within the last month and a half. It's just amazing. There's an organization called cavarts.org. It's basically an online social platform for veterans. So it's kind of like Facebook, but without all the drama, all the ads and stuff. I've met some really good people through there, like Guitars for Vets, Groove and Tom from there. There's just, oh man, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's what's kind of cool about this era of our lives. I mean, when you think back to our grandparents' generation, the World War II vets or the Vietnam vets, they couldn't leave the military and then connect with everyone they've ever served with, nor
Right,
could they connect with people from different branches that they didn't serve with, but they're curious about and they want to connect with. So
right,
with the social media and with podcasts and I'm an AM radio guy, but even I have interactions with people that I never would have met
right.
other than just being able to connect. And it's really a blessing. I mean,
It is.
I can think back to folks I knew that were in Korea and you know, like I said, World War II, all sorts of campaigns where they came home, they went to work, and that was it. I mean, they
Yeah,
might run into some local veterans just because of the nature of the population being where they are from, but they wouldn't be able to have randomly gone onto a computer, typed in
yeah.
someone's name, and found them.
Yeah, it's crazy because one of my buddies from boot camp, he lived in Maine. That's where he was from. We stepped on the yellow footprints together. We were bunk mates in boot camp. Anytime he got in trouble, we both got smoked together. If I got in trouble, he was on the quarter deck with me. If he got in trouble, I was on the quarter deck with him. And when I left 2-8 and went to 1-8, he went to MSG, so we lost track. And then Facebook, bloomed, and we reconnected on Facebook, and then we lost track again. And he stayed in. He retired. He's medically retired now, but we lost track, and then we started talking again. And it's amazing that like me, I have an undiagnosed TBI because my era of the Marine Corps was you suck it up and move on. You don't report it to BAS. And so I got an undocumented TBI. And so I forgot a lot of people's faces and a lot of people's names. Some people, stuck out in my brain, but some of them don't. And I'm like, because there's a instance when I was in Thessaloniki, Greece. Um, we were in the back of a troop carrying Humvee, so it's just a regular Humvee. Troop carrier had the tarps on the back and front and sides, and it had the strap that goes across there. Well, the driver of the Humvee decided, hey, I'm going to take this creek really fast. Well, when he did, he hit some big rocks, and me and the guy across from me fell over top of the troop strap
Hmm.
and landed in the creek.
Oh, geez.
And I was knocked out for about a minute and a half, and I just have a hard time remembering things that are not repetitive in my life. But so connecting with him and then finding other people that I served with is like, all right, cool. That's who I need to talk to. And but yeah, social media is wonderful. Unfortunately, there's just so many things that you got to figure out with social media, especially hosting a podcast. The algorithm of TikTok is different than the algorithm of Facebook, and certain keywords get you noticed more than other keywords. But a lot of it's consistency. If you stay consistent with what you're doing, then you'll be successful at what you're doing.
Yeah, and you do a lot of your shows live, I've noticed, right? So,
Every one of them.
oh, all of them are live. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't know if
every
all
one of them.
four of them were. Yeah, so I enjoy that because I noticed, so there you go, folks. You could follow Willis on his live stream, and I noticed you give some shout outs and chat to people from time to time during the
Yeah,
show.
oh yeah. Yeah,
That's a that's a fun way
that,
to do it.
that's the best part of doing a live show is when we utilize StreamYard. So we go when I go live on Heroes Media Group, Military United Podcast. Um, then I go to Homefront Sitrep. So those three are on Facebook, and then LinkedIn, and then uh, YouTube, two YouTube channels. And then with StreamYard, whenever somebody comments on one of those platforms, we can see it in the chat that's on StreamYard. And so we get to interact. And that's what I love doing this because me, my fear, what keeps me up at night is missing that one veteran that might be one of the 22. That's my fear. That's what's keep. So with me interacting with the people on chat, that means that they're tuning in and they're getting the message that, hey, you're enough. Somebody cares about you.
Right.
That's what I want to do, and that's why we do the podcast.
Yeah. That's great. It's admirable for sure. Well, folks,
Thank
you can certainly show Willis some support there and follow him on Homefront Sit Rep and all his other shows. And before we get going, I do like to ask a fun little kind of a fun time travel question. You know, knowing all the things that you were going to go through, not just your first enlistment, but the recall and everything since, and now as a veteran, what you're doing in the community. You know, if you had just like 1 minute with your younger self, you know, the younger self that was waiting to do that half a credit in summer school and all those things, if you could go back in time and just talk to yourself before you started this journey, what would be the message to young Willis?
So my message would be to document everything that happened in the military, because now, 20 plus years later, trying to find people that, for buddy letters, because it was never documented. Buddy letters for the VA works just as good as having, medical records. Um, Trying to find people, and just make sure everything's documented. Uh, that way, when you do get out and when you start your VA process, it's already streamlined, ready to go. You got everything documented. You got all your paperwork, and the suck it up culture. If you get hurt, make sure you report that shit because you need to report everything. Because don't worry about people calling you the sick call bandit. Go and report that stuff, and
Right.
that's what I would go back and tell myself.
Yeah. Keep a journal and get checked up. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff, Willis. Well, I'm really excited. I'm glad we had a chance to talk to you today. I'll keep watching you online and who knows, I might chat with you during one of your next
Hey,
episodes.
do it. If you're on there, chat. That's what
Yeah.
I love. I love chatting with our guests and our people that are watching.
Yeah, and I love how you're bringing the communities together and you're connecting the dots because it really is important. There are, especially with the homeless segment, we have a fantastic like the gold standard of a program up here in upstate New York, run by a friend of mine actually, an Army veteran, and they do a great job. And then you go to other cities and you go to other groups, and it might be people that are trying their darndest. They're all heart, but they don't have the same process or what we'd call an SOP.
Yeah,
And differences are staggering. I mean, really. My friend John up here, he tells me every day he runs this program at a mission, and he says every day my goal is to not have anyone need our services.
yeah,
And while that sounds exactly correct because it is, and that should be the goal, that's not always like sometimes people lose focus of the mission because they're too occupied on the organization's growth or
yeah,
survival.
yeah,
So I love the fact that you're connecting all these groups, you're sharing knowledge with each other, and I think the net gain to all of that is that everyone's doing a better job because they now have more knowledge because you're sharing it. So
yes,
I
yeah. I would
love
agree.
everything you're doing. Keep it up, keep charging forward, and I want to check in with you from time to time and make sure things are going well and see what we can keep doing from our side.
Well, I'd love to have you on our show on Homefront Sit
Yeah,
Reps
that'd be
when we can
fun.
talk about what you're doing.
Yeah,
So we'll have to get you scheduled for that. And I think it'd be amazing to have you on there just so people know, hey, we can check out this syndicated radio show that focuses on veterans. I think that would be amazing. So
yeah, I'd be happy to do it. I'd be honored. So. All right, Maureen. Well, Semper Fi, and
Bye.
I'm going to give you a fun little music break here, folks. This song will be in Willis's honor, and